Hello everyone, and welcome back to another homebrew workshop kind of video. This time we're going to look at the brewer's supplies, another artisan's tools that you can choose within kind of your backstory that reflect kind of your role as a worker within the world itself. Here's what we kind of know about brewer supplies already. We know that it's a type of tool. We know that it is worth 20 gold pieces and it weighs 9 pounds. But in terms of trying to make it more interesting in terms of gameplay, this is the homebrew system that I wanted to try to implement to make it easier for people to feel more specialized as a artisan. Raw ingredients that are found within the world can be used to create a number of different interesting brews or drinks. With enough skill, time, and luck, extremely valuable products can just be produced this way. Raw ingredients must be sanitized and refined, however, before being used in brewing consumption items. Once done, a gold piece value can be assigned based on this classification for the brew being attempted, with aging playing a role in adding value to the complete product. Basically, you gotta refine it because nobody wants to just take a whole dragon scale, throw it in a barrel for aging, and then drink it, or giant's toenails, and then drink it and they have it at the bottom of their mug when they're done. So refining it into a form that can actually be used within the process without it being a quote-unquote health and safety hazard is effectively what you're doing with the refinement challenge. Now, if you've seen the alchemist's kind of supplies video that we've already put out, the refinement skill challenges will be very similar. You can take the raw ingredients that doesn't have a specified gold piece value. They're unusable in their current form, and this allows you to refine them into a form that not only has a gold piece value, but also changes the items into their usable state. Refinement of this raw ingredient is a skill challenge called the Refinement Skill Challenge, and they can use any skills that they feel apply, with DC varying based on the applicability of the skills applied set by the DM. Repeated use of this same skill raises the DC for subsequent checks, with the challenge kind of being that you need to vary things up. To succeed in the refinement challenge, 2 out of 3 total checks must be succeeded, as seen on the refinement table below. You may add proficiency with brewer supplies to any of these checks if you do have it. Basically, if you're proficient with the tool, you're good with the tool. And what this will allow you to do, based on the table here, is look at the refinement. So in terms of the rarity column, which should be the outcome column, or the roll column, it's the 0 is where the refinement fails and you lose the ingredient and you have a chance to break your supplies. From there, it's just the 1 success. You have your refinement fail and you lose the ingredient, but you don't risk losing your supplies. And then from 2 on is only good. 2 is, hey, you were successful. 3 is you were successful and now it's even worth some more. So now it's worth a plus 10 gold pieces. Then at 4+, because natural 1s and natural 20s are a thing, it becomes a plus 100 gold pieces when you succeed. And how the natural 1s and natural 20s tend to play out is natural 1s count as 2 failures and natural 20s count as 2 successes for the refinement skill challenge. On a particularly bad check I can impose at this point, the DM can impose a setback or disadvantage on further checks, reflecting sort of narrative outcome to the check itself. Basically, as you try to melt something down, maybe you're trying to melt down or sweat out different oils or substances from some sort of a creature's hide, and before you take that oil as a refined ingredient. Maybe you've burned yourself in the process, and then therefore, if you do anything that's relatively physical with it, it's going to be extremely hard for you to work through that burn pain because it has to all happen all at once, right then and there. But once the refinement is complete, the DM will tell you the tier value of the ingredient that you've refined, and the units produced as a result of the refinement. This tier reflects the value and rarity of the ingredient within the world. Refining these ingredients can produce more than 1 unit, which just means that if you succeed the refinement, there's a chance that you'll receive more common items and fewer rarer value items. but each successful refinement does at least produce one ingredient. So basically, from the 5 tiers, tier 1 being the lowest and tier 5 being the highest, tier 1 is a more common ingredient. Each one of those tier 1 units is worth 5 copper pieces, and on a successful refinement skill challenge, you produce 2d4 plus 2 of those units. So you can make quite a few of these normal refined ingredients very, very quickly, but that's not where the bulk of your money is going to be coming from if you do end up having higher tier items. If you have a higher tier level 5 item, for example, looking at the ingredient tiers table here, the value is worth 10 gold pieces, and you can produce 2d4 minus 2 of these units at a time. Now, if you were to get 0 or a negative number when you roll this, you do produce at least the 1. But let's say that you rolled 4 and a 4 on your 2d4, now minus the 2, so that's 6. So you would get 6 tier 5 ingredients that are worth 10 gold apiece. And let's say that at its best, on the refinement scale challenge, you had the plus 100 gold piece value to it for having a higher number of these successful checks. Now you have potentially, at the best case scenario, 6 110 gold piece units that on their own are reflective of the tiered ingredient that you've chosen. So you can add these tiered ingredients as kind of a weight less, because we'll consider them being a part of your brewer supplies, but you add them as refined blank. So maybe as refined dragon scales, refined basilisk oil, refined whatever, and then you say any notes, plus 10, plus 100 gold piece value. And then what you can do is say quantity 1, 2, 3, 4 for whatever the units would be. So if you were to get 10 from the tier 1, if you were to have some refined corn, right, for like an ethanol, you would mark it as being worth 5 copper pieces in your inventory, and then set the units to, at its best case scenario, 10 units. So that allows you to have a variety of different ingredients that you can look at in terms of what you do have to try to make some sort of a mix. Now, the last ingredient that you need is dependent very heavily on the different recipes. You have a number of recipes that you can choose from when you create a specific brew, and each recipe has a required starter ingredient and then becomes customizable from there on out. Beginning the brewing process starts with choosing a recipe from a number of different options, and this is up kind of to your DM to see what's more popular within the world. Now, some of the example options that I have are ale, beer, gin, vodka, whiskey, tequila, rum, brandy, absinthe, amaretto, amaro, aperol, mead, sake, or wine. And all of these mixes have their own individual starter ingredients. So like an ale has an ale mix. Now these mix ingredients can be purchased in most towns in like a general store, or at a brewery, or anything else along those lines if you were to find them. And they can be in their own right a tiered ingredient should you find them. But for the most part, you're going to probably have a regular, ale mix. That's going to cost you 5 silver pieces in most towns, and it will add 5 silver pieces to the finished brew. Now, what do I mean by adding these 5 silver pieces to the finished brew? What I mean is that as you customize your finished brew, you end up taking, in effect, you take a small cask from your brewer supplies that's provided and include the starter mix and up to 5 ingredients of your choice from your tiered ingredients. From there, what you do is you roll a d6 to look at the number of days that the brewing process takes to gain its full gold piece value. You roll at the start of that process to determine the required brew time, and then each additional day beyond that, it gains in more and more value, but we'll get to that. So if you take your ale mix, automatically it on its own is worth 5 silver pieces. So you can make a 5 silver piece regular ale mix. But let's customize it a little bit. If you choose up to 5 ingredients of your choice and you have a we'll say 5 tier 1 ingredients that you want to use, 5 tier 1 unit ingredients. You can add 25 copper pieces to that 5 silver pieces, and then do the math to see exactly what that gets you. Now, that doesn't necessarily reflect an extremely high quality ale, but you do have a more valuable ale that way. Here's the thing. This is limited to 5 ingredients based off of the individual cask that you need to be able to store everything in. It can only hold so much, and so the mix plus the fluid plus everything else that you have for your ingredients is its max. And for each ingredient, it gets just a little bit heavier. Now, what that means is that each brew stored in its brewing barrel is equal to 5 pounds base, plus 2 pounds for each additional ingredient. So it's 5 pounds with just the mix. So if you were to make your ale, you add your ale mix and your water, it's as heavy as 5 pounds. And then you add an ingredient. If you add one ingredient, it goes up by 2 pounds. Which means that now, if we do the math for it, now it's 8 pounds. And if you were to do this 5 pounds plus 5 ingredients for the mix and 5 ingredients, you're looking at like 15 pounds in terms of just a cask, which can take up quite a bit of somebody's carrying capacity, but it isn't necessarily too much. So you do more commonly have the ability to set one of these things to go and then leave it in your home base and let it age forever. Now, aging is its own thing. So as it ages, let's reflect this. In the real world, different wines are limited based off of the different amounts of this kind of wine that they're able to produce each year or each season, and the different factors that tie into each season. And that's how I wanted to reflect this here in terms of aging. Aging can enhance the flavor and do all sorts of other things to the actual material, but it also gives it a little bit of notoriety. The longer that you have it, the more valuable it becomes based off of the proposed and thought of value of the mixture itself. How many times have we heard, this is whatever year, vintage. That's great. So you can make that argument to get more value as a brewmaster in this system. So for every day beyond your required brew time, you increase the value of the overall mixture by 5 gold a piece as the mixture refines and ages over time. You have it kind of marked down for when you started it, and then in game you mark off each day another 5 gold, another 5 gold, and that allows you to get to the point where eventually, if you started a mix at the very beginning of the campaign, you have an extremely valuable product by the end. You have an extremely valuable product very likely by probably even just the middle of the campaign or a little bit later in the campaign, but you kind of spend the majority of the beginning of your campaign role-playing and getting people to know your character with this as a thing you can lean on. Is I like to collect stuff because I want to make something really cool. And then you have this amazing moment where right before your final boss fight, you break out your cask and you're like, I've been making this whole time, and this is for us. We're drinking this and we're going to celebrate what we've done so far. And it has a little bit more meaningful of a moment. Now, does that have to be the way that it is? No. You can absolutely forego the aging rules if you don't think that it makes any sense. But I figured this is another way that you can kind of inject some value to the brewmaster's supplies. Now, here's the catch when it comes to the required time for aging and refining and everything there. The required brew time, if you do not currently have it done, like if you were to go into a town and try to sell your brew before it's finished with its required brew time, you do not have the full gold piece value that you would expect. So if you have quite a high level of tiers, like if you have five tier 5 ingredients, that would add 50 gold to it on top of your 5 silver, so 50 and a half gold pieces just as its base. and then you go in and you try to sell it a little bit early, even a day early compared to when it would be done, and they'll be able to tell that, and it's only worth at the most half of that total value. So as opposed to it being worth 50.5 gold, now it's only worth maybe 25. And that's just reflected of, hey, I'm not sure if this shopkeep can really handle this, or if this tavern owner can really handle this. But then you have kind of different checks and stuff like that to convince them to still take it and other things and get more money for it. But given that it only takes maybe a max of 6 days to brew any of these things, it doesn't necessarily hurt to hang on to your product and then let it age for a while to get even more money out of it. But that's the rules for brewing supplies. We'll see kind of what the next tool will be whenever I do finish the rule set for it, but stay tuned for that, and take a look in the description for a link to the Brewer Supplies Proficiency System document. This will have the rules for exactly how to use it within your game if you wanted to be a brewmaster, or if you wanted to provide your players with similar tool sets or details that allow you to specialize and shine a spotlight on the artisans within your group that want to highlight their own craft. So, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!